assembly of the Central Machinery 7" by 10" Precision Mini Lathe, model number 93212. Acquired from Harbor Freight Tools. As you can see, I have unpacked it. These were underneath, attaching this to the wooden part of the crate it was in box. 5mm Allen key. So you need a 5mm Allen key to take it out of the box. To assemble, I've read this quickly, but to assemble, you'll need 2 different size Phillips head screwdrivers and a large flathead. Also a rag. It is grease. There is an assembly diagram near the end of the manual. Of course, make sure that it's off, unplugged. What else is there? Before doing anything with this, it says to clean the grease off of this, protective grease. I'm going to be lazy and skip that. So there's 2 things you can do. You can either attach the rubber feet to this so it's can be moved around, or mount it directly to a workbench. So the parts included, it includes 2 wrenches. These should connect to all most of it. The Allen keys includes a 5mm Allen key, which would have been nice to take these off. Your chuck wrench, I think it's chuck. The spring should help you pull it off. Your 4 feet, handles for these wheels, protective coverings for your different locations. This and this brown paper section, additional jaws. Of course, most of this was in bags. I had boxes, I took it out. And this bag will contain these bolts, nuts, little bolts, screws for your feet, 4 of them, some plastic gears, which I assume are replacement parts, and a little squirt bottle. So attach the rubber feet to the bottom of the lathe, unthread the bolts that was in the bag from the bottom of the chip tray. This little guy here, you can't barely see. And then rethread them into the bottom of the lathe through the chip tray holes, tight and securely. So we take these, put our screws, these are the Phillips head, and just yeah, that works. All right, we'll do this. Okay. Now you saw me do this really cool thing where I flipped it over and then flipped it back. This thing probably weighs 100 pounds. Well, I say 100 pounds. That end's light, this end's heavy. To install the handle wheel handles on the tailstock quilt control wheel and the feed control wheel, you have these guys. Use a flathead screwdriver and a 14mm open end wrench to thread the handles into the wheels. Which this should be good. Yep, there's my 14mm. 14 inch. Yeah. So a large flathead. And let's start with this one. Still rotates. The handle does. 14. This part, usually when this comes out, this is very, very tight. For packing purposes, the cross slide crank, this guy here, is shipped from the factory facing backwards. That's obvious. Adjust the cross slide crank to face forward using a 5mm hex wrench to unthread the cap screw and turn the cross slide crank around. Tighten the cap screw securely. There it is. Apparently it uses the force of screwing it down to hold the wheel, the handle, from turning. Installing the guards, these plastic things here. To install the chuck guard, remove the 2 screws on the hinge, attach the chuck guard to the hinge using the screws. The chuck guard should be aligned so that it covers the chuck when swung down to cover it. Chuck guard, here are the screws on the hinge, and this would be your chuck, of course. To install the protective cover, remove the screw from the compound rest, slide the screw through the protective cover, washer, spring, and nut. Then thread the screw into the compound rest, slide the notch in the protective cover over the end of the slotted screw. We're going to take this off, screw it in this hole, over like this. I think I can cheat on this one, so I'm going to. That is the assembly. not too tight. Initial run. So what we'll do next. Check if the power components are working properly by performing the power test on the following run. Check that everything loose out of the way, such as this, out of the way. Nothing will interfere with the chuck when it rotates. Chuck. Turn the chuck by hand to make sure it rotates freely, which it rotates freely. Check that the 3 nuts on the chuck are tight back here. 10 millimeter. Check that they're tight. There's 1, 2, and 3 of them. On the back of the lathe, set the HL gear shift lever to low and the feeding direction selector to the middle neutral position. Feeding direction. High-low is back here, in line with this. It's a handle like that here. This side is high, and if you bring it to the back, it's in the low position. Low is this way, high is that way. On the front of the lathe, make sure the forward off reverse switch is set to the off position. Off. Feeding direction selector. It's on this side, back side of the high-low selector. Easiest way to move it up and down is to pull it towards the back. It's tough, but it's possible. Pull, and then there's 3 spots. All the way down is the first spot, up some, it's the second, a little more, it's the third place, and it can be gotten to move even further up. So it is possible to move it farther up than there's actual positions. Middle hole or notch is the neutral. There's a picture to show you the positions. Yep. Turn the speed control knob to 0, like so. That is off. Before turning on the mini lathe each time it is to be used, the speed control knob must be set to 0. Plug this in and turn this little switch to forward. This way. Turn this power switch on. Gently rotate the speed control knob clockwise past the wand to the first setting. This speed will increase the further the knob is turned. The lathe should run smoothly with little or no vibration or friction sounds when it starts. If you notice unusual sounds or vibrations, turn off the power switch, turn the speed control knob to 0, unplug the machine, and have the problem corrected before further use. As the lathe is running smoothly, continue running it for several minutes, gradually increasing the speed control knob, setting and letting it run for several more minutes, at each setting before increasing to the next level. Continue until you've run the lathe all the way up to the highest setting. Turn the power switch off and wait for the lathe to come to a complete stop. Repeat the process with the HL gear over on the inside. Shift lever at the high setting, bring it in. Then repeat at both the low then high setting with the forward off reverse switch in the reverse position. So slowly run this up, a little at a time, waiting at each point until you reach maximum speed. Turn it off, start back at 0 with this lever in the high position, again all the way to the top, turn it off, bring this back to 0, low, reverse, repeat the process again in reverse. Warning, the mini lathe must be completely stopped before changing the forward reverse off switch, the feed direction selector, or the gear shift lever. So this or these two guys back here. Turn the power switch off, the speed control knob to 0, and unplug the lathe after you've run it completely through. Check the compound rest crank, the cross slide crank, to see that the compound rest and the cross slide work properly. If they are too tight or too loose, adjust the gibs located at both crank sides, and to see gib adjustments in the manual section of this manual. So basically, do these work? And if there's some trouble, check these basically shims in here and in here. There we are. Okay, there we go. Seems that there was something stuck in here, so it didn't come all the way over. There's a nice, good movement trouble. There we go. It says this will not run if this is up. Let's see. Yep, won't run. Has to be down. There we go. That is the assembly of the mini lathe from Harbor Freight.